Hi, everyone. Welcome to Run with Alli Live. It is Tuesday, August 9th, and I have probably my favorite person in the running world assigned myself, Dr. Yessis, on the show today. Dr. Yessis, how is it in California?
Oh, it's kind of warm right now. We've been up in the 90s for about over a month.
Wow, yeah, it's pretty hot here in Brooklyn, New York, too, but hopefully it cools down soon.
What part of Brooklyn?
Williamsburg.
Oh, okay. You were by Brooklyn Tech. That was my high school.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, not, a neighbor, not far. But before we dive into this show episode, to all of the returning listeners on here, if you have not already subscribed to the show, please do so after this episode so I could keep bringing on special guests like Dr. Yessis. And for those of you new here, welcome. This is a very good episode for you to join today, especially for you first-time marathoners in training. I know that's a large part of the listeners on here, so without further ado, I bring to you Dr. Yessis. He is basically known as the country's expert on sports technique, but predominantly running technique is what we're talking about today. And he's changed my running, and by using his apparatus, I've been able to help many other athletes strengthen their ability to run further and faster while staying injury free. So,
Great.
Dr. Yessis, how are you? And
It's Yessis.
Dr. Yessis. Okay, sorry, my bad.
No problem.
Dr. Yessis. Yeah, so I would love for you to introduce yourself and just tell us what you're about before we dive into any questions.
Well, that could be a long, a long discourse, but no, essentially, I've been involved in analyzing technique, not only of running, but many other sports. And I do this. I learned it from the Russians because they were talking about different aspects of technique that I said, what are you guys talking about? I never realized the fine points of many of the different skills that we encounter. So as I got into technique, I started looking at it and I said, hey, this is really the secret. You have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if it's not effective, then you got to change. And how do you know what to change? Well, you have to understand the kinesiological and biomechanical factors of technique. So it's really a science in itself. And most people, I have found, kind of ignore technique. Oh yeah, running, just put one foot in front of the other. Well, that's the most simplistic thing in the world. You don't just put one foot in front of the other, because in actuality, one foot should be coming backward when you land on the ground. So you're not just putting it in front, it's in front and then being drawn back. But anyway, I'm getting into some of the different aspects.
No, that's very, coming from you, that is amazing information to hear. I am very appreciative of it. I think that not enough people in this world, and just from our lifestyle and our habits, understand that we need to learn how to run properly. Myself included, my boyfriend at the time, when I was running one day, he just noticed that I was kind of flopping my feet on the ground. And he was like, why don't you extend your ankle? And then, we kind of like looked into mechanics and came across your work. And I just think it's amazing and incredible how your apparatus has changed my running. And I know it's doing the same for many others, but it could help so many other people. So it's not very far off what you said.
Okay. And I don't know if you were going to mention it, but I have a book called Explosive Running.
Yes, I have it.
Edition. That really has, I would say, all of the detail that you need, not only about running technique, but exercises you can do to strengthen different aspects of your running. So if you have any problems, you know what they are, you can fix them. So all is not lost when it comes to improving your running. and becoming a better runner.
Yes, I have your book. It's an amazing book, and I've been using it since February, applying specific drills from that. And so, getting into that, I know you have so many active stretches, strength training specific movements for runners. Would you say that the knee drive and the paw back are two of the most important exercises for distance runners? Of course, everyone's different, but
No, we're all different, but we still have to do the same thing to be a better runner, or a faster runner, or a longer runner. And those two actions, the knee drive, or the act of bringing the thigh forward, and the act of bringing the thigh backward, are probably the two most important aspects of running technique, and they account for 80% of your running speed.
wow.
Yeah, when you stop to think about it, that's really quite amazing. And the other 20% is the ankle extension, because you have a little push off at the end of your forward stride. And those are the three force producing actions. Your arms don't really contribute that much. They're used more for synchronization. So you hear many gurus sometimes saying, oh, you got to pump the arms faster. Well, what I say to them, stand in one place and pump your arms real fast. How fast are you going? You're not going anyplace. So your arm's not moving you, but you bring your thigh forward and back, you're going to move. You can't stand still.
Yes. I'm so happy you said that. And what about the calf raises and the heel drop? Just because I know that's a lot of Achilles, and my calves burn when I do that. So I would just love to hear your take on that as well.
All right. You need that ankle extension to help you push forward horizontally. Too many runners use the ankle extension too early, and they're going upward rather than forward. All your actions should be directed to improving your forward speed. And I know there was some expert, what the heck was his name? I put quotes around expert, who said the key to running was upward momentum. How in the world upward momentum can lead to forward speed is beyond me. Yet he had many followers. Oh, we had arguments on the web. So anyway, everything should be horizontal. That's the key to running faster and better and more effectively. How we achieve it, that's another ballgame. So anyway,
Well,
yeah.
well, so that's an interesting point. So where, I guess, so the knee drive, the paw back, the ankle extension, and yes, the explosive calf raises after those three. But all of those are the strength exercises I've been doing, and I've seen drastic improvements in my own running. So I'm just curious, when you work or when you have worked with distance runners, where do you start them out? Like if you're meeting someone for the first time and they say, hey, my running technique's really off, like what do you suggest?
All right. First, if I may, I don't know if it's really a correction or not, but most of the runners that come to me don't come to me and say that my technique is not good. They come to me and say, hey, I either want to be faster or I get injured all the time. What's happening? And so we have to look at other things. Then I bring in technique. You have to know how you run. And I usually start them off from a walk to a little jog. And when they jog, that tells me whether they're landing on the heel or on the ball of the foot or midfoot. So according to what I found, you have to have a midfoot landing or ball heel immediately. Your best marathon runners in the world are usually ball heel or close to midfoot. That's the key. But not landing on the heel. See, landing on the heel first, with the foot up, very ineffective because you're breaking yourself. Every time the heel hits the ground like that, it's like putting on the brakes. And you can support this by taking a look at your own running. When you want to stop, what do? You put your heel on the ground. So that's a stopping action. It's not going to make you go forward or faster. Okay?
Yeah. I think that I was just letting you, finish your thought. There's all this information out there that's like, yeah, heel striking could be good or bad based on you specifically as a runner. So I find it very interesting that you said, it's really not effective and it should be ball heel if anything. And the way you just described it makes a lot of sense because it just does. Like I'm just thinking of running and, slowly going this way. And yeah, heel striking, I think you're bound to get injured or just not really run fast.
Yeah. The heel hit, I don't know how it got perpetuated, but that was probably the worst piece of information anybody could give you.
Yeah, well, we live and we learn, right?
Oh, sure. There's always not only room for improvement, but there's always more knowledge coming about. Although in a running area, sometimes I think we go backwards more than we go forward. And I'm not talking about running. I'm talking about knowledge.
I would love for you to elaborate on this.
Well, too often we're given erroneous information and it becomes popular. And there are gurus out there, I can't think of their names right now, who actually advocate improper running technique. They say, oh, this is the way to become faster. Do this exercise. It'll really help you. Like one that always gets me, they even develop an apparatus with this, where you drive the thigh upward. Let's say you're leaning at a 45-degree angle, then you drive the knee up. Well, you do drive the knee forward, but not upward. So when the knee is driven forward, it's only driven forward a little bit past midline or up to midline, and then it carries on a small momentum. But every time you're driving that knee beyond the horizontal, beyond the vertical, and more upward, then the slower you're going to be. Because now you're directing the forces upward, which you don't want, rather than forward. So you got to think everything is forward. That's the key.
Yes, that's very helpful. And, first I'm going to start with, like, if you were to see a pro runner like Eliud Kipchoge, I don't know if you've seen him run. I think that, you mentioned this in your book, even the pros have things to work on. Everyone could always work on, things to improve their running technique. What's your take on like someone who is competing for a living like that and is that, talented, working on their running technique in a later stage in their career?
Oh, sure. Technique. In fact, you should never stop working on technique. Let's say, even if you go on a strength training program, as you develop strength, it changes your technique. So any kind of change in your physical development must reflect in changes in technique. So you can't ignore it. You must always be making adjustments. Now, you don't want to become possessed with every aspect of technique, but how should I put it? It's so hard to get through to many people. You have to work on technique, but not to the exclusion of other things. So you go on a strength training program. Hey, you run a program for a while. Then you have to take a look at technique. how did it change my technique? Make modifications to technique, but still continue on the strength training program or endurance, whatever it might be. See, all too often we think in terms of strength rather than for a marathon runner, you need endurance. And endurance is the key. That's muscular endurance as well as cardiovascular endurance. We have two types of technique here. I mean, two types of physical development.
Yes.
So I lost my train of thought.
No, I think, so I have a question for you. It's interesting that you said that. I love that you said that. Is it odd, for example, like I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig here. Ever since I've been using, the knee drive pull back drills with the active cords, the heel drop, and working on the ankle extension every run, and performing these drills 2 to 3 times a week, I've noticed that my physical body and my muscular endurance is like here, and my cardiovascular endurance, my heart's now catching up. Is that something like you've seen in the past, or I would love, to hear more.
In a way, yes. It all depends upon the development that the person already has. Typically, their aerobic endurance is pretty good, so they don't see any drastic changes. But if you do, that's fine. So everything is, it's like a balancing act. As you do one thing, something else happens over here. As you do this, then something happens here. So the interchange between them becomes interesting. And every person is different.
Yeah, I think because I introduced this muscular endurance training into my program, I've never done it before. And so my body was really in shock and just kind of adapted. It's been adapting in a good way because I have a pretty good base. I used to, swim. I've been running since 2015, going for a sub-3 marathon in Chicago. I just ran a 38:04 10K from a 40-minute 10K. Like these are pretty big steps,
Sure.
right?
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And it's the one thing I've changed in my training. Like I have a coach and he, coaches me on running. And I am one, but your strength training for runners, yes, because it's different than just strength. And you're right. I just feel like it goes unnoticed a lot and there's a lot of information out there and more people just need to understand the importance of using your hip flexors, your quads, being able to do that while running.
Yeah, see, and one thing that we're kind of taking for granted, you and I, but most people don't, and that's that you're capable of improving your strength or strength endurance to enhance your running. See, most people think to become a better runner, I have to run more. Well, this is a given, but not just running by itself, because that could be a negative. You have to know why you're increasing your running, how you're increasing your running. That's probably the most important. How? So, and this is where your technique comes in. You have to learn how to do it and then do it. But too many runners, are told, oh yeah, you got to go on a strength training program. Well, I could do all the biceps curls in the world. It's not going to make me a better runner. So again, it's what you do and how you do it. See, I typically have my runners and other athletes start with the 1x20 program that I developed. That means one set of 20 repetitions. So it's knee drive, 1, 2, 3, up to 20. Now, if you're capable of going a little bit further, you go up to 25. But you do the most you can. And if you can do, let's say if 25 becomes easy, then increase the resistance. This is how you moderate your program. You don't just say, okay, let me see 20 reps of with 5 pounds or 10 pounds. Well, this might be good initially, but you have to keep improving or increasing the resistance, but still staying at that X amount of endurance. endurance, muscular endurance is the key.
Yes. And you know, to the first time marathoners on here, anyone else listening on here, I hope you don't take this with a grain of salt. I can't wait to share Dr. Yessis' links and his link to his book, but his website that is gonna, you know, show you more of what he's about so you could look into this. But you can't start running faster by just running more, because you got to check out, like Dr. Yes said, how you're doing that. And a great way to do that is by building muscular endurance and mimicking the ways you use your muscles when you run,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and you know, so I love what you said, the 1 by 20. Is that a part of your Yes's system?
Yes, and I also have a book on it, the 1 by 20 program. You know how I developed it. See, 20 came about where I found you need not only muscular endurance, but strength. So if you take a look at 20 repetitions, when you first get started, you're dealing with strength. As you get up over, let's say 14, 15, you're dealing with muscular endurance. And then by the time you get to 20, some odds it's still muscular endurance or more toward the endurance side. So you get a combination of both. You're getting stronger, you're getting more muscular endurance, more strength and endurance, strength and endurance. And I think, see, the strength is very important for prevention of injury, as well as the muscular endurance. You can't escape them. It's just like with your cardiovascular system. You need the aerobic system developed. You need a mixed aerobic anaerobic system developed, as well as the lactic acid for that, or for the anaerobic for that big kick at the end, if you want to have anything left. So all three systems are needed. Same thing with strength. You need both systems, strength and muscular endurance.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's very simple, but we have a tendency of making everything more difficult than it is. Or we learned something, we heard it from somebody saying this, and we take it as the gospel. Everybody has to, I was going to use their heads, but everybody does, but they're not always getting the right information. So examine what you're doing. Why are you doing it? How effective is it? Don't just take things for granted. Oh yeah, I gotta do more of this. That's silly. I do more of this because I do more of that because. And if you answer these questions, you're going to be on the right road to becoming a better runner.
I love that. And this is just, wow, that's amazing. You know, how would you know when to progress yourself while doing these resistance exercises? Let's say if I'm using the green active cords and I'm up to 25 reps.
Then it's time to increase resistance.
After one time, after two times?
Well, typically at the beginning, you only need one set. So too often, we think too much in terms of how many times should I do that, or how many sets should I do. Forget about just sets. You know, you can get for a beginner, you can get as much development with one set as you can with two or more. Kind of surprising, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But you would think, gee, the more I do that, the better I'm going to become. No. You're only going to get X amount of development out of any one exercise. So, and especially I think most runners that you deal with, correct me if I'm wrong, one set is going to be more than enough. You're not elite. Elite runners, that's a new ball game. But more beginners, intermediates, they can work the same, and one set will bring about the same gains as two or more sets.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's amazing. When I do my running technique drills, it takes me 10 minutes. I do one set, and of course I'm eliciting gains. I feel it. And yes, it's still challenging, but it doesn't have to kill you. And I love that you said that, because strength training and this type of strength training doesn't need to kill you. So listeners on the show, it's Dr. Yessis said it himself. So listen, and pay close attention. For someone like, I guess, who's going for a sub 3 hour marathon, would you say that they should do more sets? Not necessarily, just increase the resistance.
See, sets really depend upon the level of your development, not what you're going to be running. I see too many runners, oh yeah, I got to do a marathon, or this is their goal. And if you watch them near the end or the last mile or so, they're dying. Their tongues are hanging out, they're hardly moving. You see them loping along. Well, that's stupid. Is it that important that you got to finish that mile and then wind up recuperating for 2 weeks? No. Do what you can to your abilities and gradually build up. Just achievement of a marathon does not mean you're a much better runner. Or you may feel good and brag about it. Oh yeah, I did this marathon. So what? Don't make that as the end goal. That's only one step along the way. Everything you do should be like part of your total training. It's building up to an end result. What is your goal? It is only to achieve the marathon. Once you got it, what do you got? Nothing. You have nothing left to go to. So, but if that's that's your choice, hey, I did a marathon, then you might as well retire. You don't have to keep training.
Right, unless you're going for a time goal or something.
Yeah. So yeah, but see, you have to have that goal. I'm trying to achieve this. Now I want to work up to that. I'm trying to achieve that. Got to work up to it. There was a program. It was on TV. I can't think of the name of it, but they were talking about how to improve running. And they spent almost all their time. They had a few physiologists on the panel, and all they knew was increasing your VO2 max or increasing this or that and the other. Well, that's a silly way of looking at it, but that was the way they were looking at it. So all improvements should be for a reason. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, and I think that brings up a good point. And kind of what I got from that was that VO2 max is a component of of training, and that is completely irrelevant to strengthening your body in a way that it's used for running, because it's almost like, how are you going to run properly if your muscles can't even run?
Right.
Yeah. So
we have a long way to go.
We do have a long way to go, but that's what I love about the sport. And experts like you who really truly know what works, just from your experience alone, and your work, it's valuable. So yeah, everyone on here, don't watch silly running shows. Dr. Yessis, a few more questions for you. So what is one of the top marathoners that you've worked with, and I would love to hear about some improvements that you've seen from them by working with them. You don't have to say names. Yeah, and I know there are many.
I was just trying to recall. I know I've worked with a few, but don't ask me who they are now. In terms of their improvement, probably the most startling, I shouldn't use startling, but to most people it would be, is your ability to run without any problems. They can go as long as they want or as fast as they want. and no injury. See, too many runners at any one time, I think about, and there have been some stats on this, about 25% of the running group is injured and not running. So when you take a look at this number of people, it's terrible. 25% not running because of injuries sustained while running. That should never be. But why are they getting injured? Improper technique, improper training. But improper training, in some cases, could be number one, but usually it's number two. Improper technique is number one. Yeah, we have a ways to go.
Wow. So just curious, for someone on here who's thinking, I could run a mile right now, but maybe one day a goal of mine is to just run a marathon and finish injury free. Would you recommend that they start with running technique and like focusing on that at the start of their program?
Definitely. Because without proper running technique, or I should say effective running technique, too many people confuse proper. You don't have to have a map saying you have to go this way, that way. No, it's not prescribed. Every runner is different. They all run differently. You may drive your thigh forward a little bit more than me. You may not bring your leg back as far or as forcefully or as fast. We're all different, but yet we're all doing the same thing. That's why we're all going to be different. And we're going to have different times, which is fine. This is the normal population. This is normal among people. And we shouldn't, think of ourselves as exceptions or exceptions to the rule. We all do the same thing. But how well we do it is what determines how well a runner we're going to be, or how good a runner.
I absolutely love that. Yeah. Wow. For injured runners on here, I hope you're taking note too, because this is, a great way to prevent those injuries next go around.
Sure. And technique has to be number one. You look at technique, you improve your technique, you're decreasing or eliminating injury.
Yes.
Most injuries to runners, I found, come from the heel hit, which is what most marathon runners do. They land on the heel. Get away from the heel. Because when you land on the heel, the shock goes right up your body. Then it might wind up, I got a bad back, or my back is sore. Well, it's because of your running technique. And they say, well, gee, how can my back be affected by how I run? Because forces travel throughout the body. They don't just stay down to your foot, or to your knee, or to your hip, right up into your lower back.
Yeah, and I can imagine that leads to things like shin splints, plantar fasciitis, could lead to a lot of things that we all want to avoid while running, to enjoy the longevity of the sport, I think.
See, now one thing that I sometimes do to prove a point, have the runner run barefoot. Go get a nice grassy area and run barefoot. If they're heel hitters, they're going to find out, hey, I can't run. It hurts every time I land on my heel. So there's one way of teaching them the heel hit is not effective. But when they have these nice cushions, soles, then I can land on my heel. But you see how you're using a crutch to support improper technique. Get away from that shoe that allows you to land on your heel. This is where some of the, what was it, the Vibram, or it's not a shoe. It's more like a shell. So it's like running barefoot. If you can run it barefoot, you're going to be a good runner. You have basically running technique that is not injurious, and we could say maybe it's a good running technique. But if it hurts, don't get a crutch to support your hurt. And that's what people do.
Words like, don't just throw on a pair of alpha flies
Yeah,
and think it's going to be okay.
right.
You still got to work on these things and, run properly and understand how to get faster, like you've been saying. Yes, I love that. So I know we've covered a lot on here, but I would love to know your three top level tips for anyone who might be a little intimidated to start running, and maybe just some kind of advice, guidance, whatever you want it to be. 3.
Well, everybody is so different. It's like elementary, but I don't know. I think, well, I'll tell you what I do with many runners at the beginning when I work on technique, or to make them an effective runner. Start off with a walk, then go to a jog. And when you're jogging, you have to land ball heel. Can't land on your heel. Now, most runners, when they do this, as they're landing on the ball of their foot, their calves get tight and they can't run more. They can't run very far, which is fine. But stop when you feel it. Then gradually go back the next day or 2 days later and do the same thing again. Now you notice when you do this, you may not be able to run as far because now you're hurting, but that's okay. Keep within your limits. See, most people runners say, well, today I'm going to go out and do an 880. Today I'm going to go out and do a mile. No, that's the wrong thing. You don't want to look at how much you can do. You want to look at how I can do it and how far I can go with good technique. Because now I'm not going to get injured. Now it might be a little slow, and they say, well, gee, I sure didn't go very far. I couldn't even do a mile. I couldn't even do a half a mile. And I want to be a marathon runner? See, it doesn't fit. If I'm going to do a marathon run, I got to run more. I can run more. See, the more and more and more concept, it doesn't work here. Not if you want to be a good runner. In time. See, it'd be great if we would teach this in our classes. The physical education, I think, has done a poor job of really teaching running or any sports technique. Well, many reasons here, and I don't want to pick on them, but all I do is, well, I just go out and run. As a teacher, go out and run. Everybody runs haphazardly around the track a few times. Okay, that's it. Class over.
I had to run the mile in high school.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I had to run the mile during my gym class in high school, and at the time I was not a runner, I was a swimmer, and my gym teacher was like, just go run.
Yeah. It's a waste.
Yeah.
This is where I criticize the physical education profession. They're not really teaching technique. And this is what they should be doing. I think, like in terms of the Russians and Chinese who used the Russian system when they first, started training athletes. They didn't do, let me do a sports skill. Let's say tennis. They didn't play a game of tennis until they were about 12 or 13. Now, that is unheard of in this country. Because you start off playing a game. Hey, I want to be a tennis player. I got to play tennis. No. you develop the skills. Hey, I'm going to spend a little time working on backhand. I'm going to spend time working on forehand. I'm going to spend some time working on the volley or whatever it might be. See, and this takes years before you develop good technique in these skills. So the same thing with running. All right, I'm going to work on the knee drive. But I'm going to spend more time working on pullback. This is probably the most important aspect of running that runners are not capable of doing well. This concept of bringing the foot back in order to go forward is foreign. Most runners think, well, if I want to go forward, I got to keep reaching out. The longer my stride, the better I'm going to be. Yeah, but do you know that you are actually increasing your stride when you bring the leg back to land on the ground? Because it gives you more impetus pushing backward to drive you forward. So it's actually a longer stride. See,
Yeah.
it sounds contradictory up here, but it isn't.
Also, though, when you do it, it makes sense. And when you look at the numbers, stride length, Garmin has it, I've noticed my cadence is the same, maybe a little bit lower to be honest, but the amount that I'm pushing is got to be more powerful, and just my stride is probably, my guess would be getting more efficient, especially with doing the paw back drill and, you know, making sure I'm bringing my shin back under my body or a little in front of it before hitting the ground.
Yeah. Now, see, even there, we have to be careful. You said bringing the shin back, which of course does happen, but it's not just the shin, it's bringing the leg back. See, because you could drive the thigh forward, just bring the shin back, very ineffective. The thigh's got to be come back too. Because, as I said before, thigh moving forward, thigh moving backward, 80% of your speed. Now, it could change. Yeah, that's for a good runner. But if you're ineffective, those numbers could change. But it shows you the potential of that thigh action or the knee or whatever it might be.
Yes. So to all the listeners on here, your running could be changed for the better by understanding how to run properly by 80% over year, over year, over year. This doesn't happen overnight. Like Dr. Yessis says, this takes time. I feel like a broken record saying that, like a marathon, it takes time. Patience is a virtue, but it truly is. Time and consistency is a beautiful thing.
Right.
Yeah. So last question. I know we're a little over, but I have to ask, why did you say yes to being on the Run with Alli Live podcast today?
Well, because I like getting the information out and get more people to understand what's involved, or if I can contribute to make them a better runner, to me, that's very satisfying.
Amazing.
I enjoy doing it.
Well, I know you're going to inspire a lot of people. You've inspired me, and you know, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And yeah, of course. And to the listeners on here, again, Dr. Yessis, be mindful of his time. His information is going to be in the show notes, but you could reach out to him. And yes, other than that, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I will see you at the same time, same place next week. Thank you so much for joining today.